Hello. So today's question is about how you can have a spiritual business. They call it, people have different terms and definitions for spirituality. In my life, I'm quite truthfully, I'm non-religious, and really, the way I define spirituality is more about rigorous introspection rather than a belief in any deity or intelligence. That doesn't mean that you can't. But I just want to be upfront about that and express that that's really where I land in the spectrum of things. Can you have a spiritually based business? Of course it's possible. And can you make money with it? Of course it's possible again. And I want to attempt to, I say it's an attempt because it's complicated. And I struggle and squirm a little bit with this, but in a good way, because I want to express the truth as best as I can here. Or some truths that, or rather not so much truth, but really some possibilities that might give you a guide in how to be spiritual in your way and also make money and have things work in your life. So a couple of distinctions. One is that spirituality, most people, when they talk about spirituality in the non-religious domain, the concept of consciousness comes up. What does it mean to be conscious and to be truthful? Even though we made a lot of inroads in brain science, we still really don't understand consciousness very well at a very basic root kind of manner. We really don't understand it. But are we making progress? Yes, we are. And there are definitely clearly many levels of consciousness. You can be in a wake state, you can be in a dream state. There are several sleep states, or at least a couple of sleep states. And for anybody who's gone under anesthesia, in a surgery like I have, or you've taken some of the legal drugs that are administered for pain relief, when you're in hospital, you definitely experience different levels of consciousness. I'll assure you on that. And strange as these areas may be, again, I don't want to really necessarily talk too much, not because I want to avoid the topic. It's actually a very intriguing topic and there's quite a lot of work being done on it. But what I want to talk about is something a little bit more perhaps closer to where most people operate. And there are two distinctions. One is in the distinction of what I call mindfulness, which is not what most people talk about. They talk about mindfulness, they talk about meditation. And meditation is one form of mindfulness, but really on a more general abstraction of mindfulness and another distinction called flow. So when I talk about mindfulness and flow, mindfulness is really a domain of study or research initiated or probably really researched pretty well by a lady by the name of Ellen Langer, who I have a great high degree of regard for. She wrote a book called Mindfulness based on a lot of her research that she did back in the late 70s, I believe, or in the 70s or maybe early 80s. But she had researched this for quite a long time. And it's a great set of distinctions, but she defines, one way of defining mindfulness, you could say, is the opposite of being automatic or mechanical in your approach to life or business. A lot of people are very mechanical or automatic, and you can see it in how they operate and how they be with you in their business. They tend to just follow a very linear route, perhaps. Very predictable almost, you could say, but too contrived, too rule-based, too rigid, and it's not flexible enough to respond to different nuances or different or exceptions to the rule. And why is this important? Because not just for spiritual reasons, but for the reason of just having a good business. See, if you're very rigid in your approach to business and how you interact with your customers or clients, then I assert at some point you may run into trouble, and a lot of people do. It doesn't take too much to really see this, right? You look at some of the reasons why businesses have gone under. Well, they didn't pay attention to certain information. They became mindless. it became automatic in their response. Ellen Langer talks about 3 forms of mindlessness, which is the opposite of mindfulness. One is when you're not open to new information. Secondly, when you're not open to different perspectives. And thirdly, when you stop creating new categories of information. The latter is the most interesting thing from a spiritual point of view, because, see, it's fairly, well, I shouldn't say it's fairly simple, but very easy to understand how you can be open to new information. It's fairly easy to see how you can be open to different perspectives and how that can benefit you. But creating new categories of information requires a little bit more attention and a little bit more savvy, you could say, savvy in the sense of that can only come from dialogue, lots of dialogue and lots of growth, lots of ability to challenge yourself. And so creating new categories of information, an example would be, when you create a new category of information or a new way of categorizing your approach to certain clients. Initially, you may start with certain categories that just help you understand it. But as you go along, you'll find exceptions here and there, and this is where mastery in business comes in, no matter what field you're in. I have clients who are in the travel industry, and they know nuances about certain times of travel. Summer is not just the highest time of travel. There's so many nuances in each week of summer that if you don't understand, you could be leaving a lot of money on the table and could lead to a lot of breakdowns. Similarly, there are nuances in leadership, depending on the industry and the kind of people, the gender you deal with. And, there are people who come up with all kinds of categories of how you categorize people, right? There's the Myers-Briggs and all that. I'm all for studying that to start with. But as you go along, you can find that you stop creating new categories of people. You stop looking at the nuances, the exceptions to the rule for all these categories. And so if you only treat somebody as an introvert, then you miss out on a lot of information in that person. And so there's the whole idea of creating new categories. A lot more, and I can talk about it. And I wish I had more time, but I want to just cover that, to give you an introduction at least to the idea. The other distinction is flow. And flow, very simply put, there are many ways of looking at flow. One is your level of challenge and skill in your life. If you have too much challenge with respect to skill, then you may be anxious. If you have too little challenge, you get bored. So it's that sweet spot where the challenge just meets your skill just at the right level, or your skill is just a little bit ahead of your challenge level, or vice versa. That puts you at a sweet spot where your activation level, so to speak, activation level is how much your brain is engaged in something. It's just at that sweet spot, right? So you say, what has that got to do with spirituality? Well, I say it gets you a more grounded approach to being spiritual, because you're looking at something that you can maybe have more access to, more control over, just your skill and your challenge level. And when you have that experience where your skill level is just meeting your challenge level, the person who originated this, Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, again, I have a lot of high regard for, wrote a book called Flow. It's a very famous book. But he talks about autotelic experiences. Autotelic experiences, this is where you might see the relationship with spirituality. Autotelic experiences are experiences that you do just for the sake of doing it, because you love it, because you enjoy the experience. There's no reason. I do my art because I love it. It's not because I can make money at it. I don't really. But because I love doing it. To a great extent, you could make the argument, even though I have a business of coaching, could be doing other things, honestly. But I do coaching because it's an autotelic experience. I do it for the sake of doing it. I love it. My brothers do. One of my brothers has a startup. I know he loves it because that's what he loves doing. My other brother, Manu, has consultancy for economics. That's what he loves to do. That's what he does it. I'm sure it does it for financial reasons as well as I do, but he also does it because it's what's there to do. In the experience of doing it, and I can tell when he's talking about it, when he's engaged in it, there's an experience of just doing it because you love it. And that's important to learn. You know, in this day and age, people talk about it, and it becomes a cliche, almost pedantic experience when you hear people talk about, you know, doing what you love to do, right, and your money will follow. Well, you know, there's so many nuances to that. To understand it, you actually have to experience it. You actually have to go for it, do it. And, you know, you can read all you want about Stephen Jobs when he talks about this, you know, you bring your passion to what you do. But, you know, it's a whole different ballgame when you actually experience it. And it does take some determination to make money at it. Because, you know, there are easy ways to make money, you know, without necessarily having to love something. But my encouragement is to look at that, to look at the question of what, you know, rather than looking at why you can't make money at it, which is where most people go. They spend a lot of energy on it. It's remarkable. People will come to my seminars or my workshops or my trainings, my meetups, my speaking engagements, and they'll spend a lot of energy and time on why something can't work. In that same breath of time that they spent on that, they could have been asking a question which is more intelligent, probably more forward-looking, which is, how can I make it work? How can I make it work? How can I make my life work where I can feed my family and do what I love? And now, is it an easy answer? Oftentimes it's not. But, you know, if it was easy, then I assert it would take something out of it. You know, I'm not saying everything in life has to be hard, but maybe part of the spirituality in your life that you crave for, if you're listening to this video, you certainly might want some more of that in your life. I have a very grounded approach to it, and the grounded approach is to ask the question, you know, are you really willing to do what it takes to make it happen? Maybe it's in the struggle that you discover yourself and the joy of life. And maybe if things are too straightforward for you, you just make it life on the basis of just making money, that you miss out on something. And maybe it's in the struggle of discovering what you really love and how to make money that something comes together that may not be possible before. And this is why people are so engaged with people who have actually done it, right? But when you talk to the people, most of the people who have actually done it, they're really quite straightforward about it. There's nothing really highfalutin. They're not necessarily extraordinary. I should say they are ordinary human beings who've chosen to be extraordinary. And so maybe the path is to struggle with the question. You know, keep your day job. Don't do anything crazy. But struggle with that question. And the way you struggle with it is actually to have a dialogue with someone who can help you. Someone like a coach, or a therapist, or a good friend who can listen without being premature with advice. So I hope that helps you. It's a question I get asked from time to time. Regardless of whether you're an atheist or someone who believes in a spirit, divine energy or not, I certainly don't. I don't have anything against anybody who does. I have clients who are very religious and very spiritual, and some who are not. I don't think it matters. I think what really matters is in asking the question and being willing to struggle with the question. And if you're willing to struggle with it over time, the 100 billion neurons that are up here, of which maybe 1% you might use over a lifetime, even that 1% will probably, statistically speaking, if you engage in the thinking enough and do enough actions over time, be willing to bet that you'll find an answer. I hope that helps and hope that serves you. Enjoy your time. Thank you.